Today, we're diving into an epic story about how a group of tough mountain warriors from Anatolia, called the Isaurians, completely changed the course of history by saving the Byzantine Empire from collapsing under the weight of Germanic influence. So, let's take a quick step back. From the late 4th century through the 5th century, Germanic tribes played a massive role in shaping the Roman Empire, especially in the West. These tribes didn't just invade, they actually started running the show. Germanic leaders were given high-ranking positions in the military and government, and soon enough, the Western Roman Empire had lost control of most of its lands, leaving only parts of Italy and France. To make matters worse, the emperors in the West were basically puppets, controlled by powerful Germanic warlords. For example, Stilicho, a Vandal general, ran things behind the scenes for years, and Ricimer, a Suevi prince, decided which emperors got to stay and who needed to go. This domination by the Germanic tribes was a key reason the Western Roman Empire finally collapsed in 476 CE. Now, on the other side of things, the Eastern Roman Empire, what we call the Byzantine Empire, was facing similar problems. Germanic generals had also worked their way into positions of power in Byzantium. One of the most influential was Aspar, a general who, despite his foreign background and Arian Christian beliefs, held major sway in the empire. Since he couldn't claim the throne for himself, Aspar put one of his soldiers, Leo, in power, hoping he would be easy to control. But here's where things take a sharp turn. Leo was not the puppet Aspar expected. Instead, Leo recognized the growing danger of letting the Germanic faction control everything. He needed new allies to counter this influence, and he found them in the Isaurians, a rugged, fearless tribe from the mountains of southern Anatolia. These mountain warriors were a bit of an outsider group themselves, not fully integrated into Byzantine society, but Leo saw their potential. To cement this alliance, Leo even married off his daughter to one of the top Isaurian leaders, a guy named Tarasicadissa, who later took on the simpler, more Byzantine-friendly name of Zeno. Over the next several years, a fierce power struggle played out between the Germanic faction led by Aspar and the newly empowered Isaurians. The Germanic side took a hit when Aspar's ally, Basiliscus, failed miserably in a campaign against the Vandals in North Africa, despite having a massive army. Things only got worse for Aspar when it was discovered he and his sons were plotting against Zeno and the Isaurians. By 471 CE, Leo decided he had had enough. He ordered Aspar and other top Germanic leaders to be killed, wiping out their influence within the empire. While this move freed the Byzantine Empire from internal Germanic control, it didn't come without a cost. Aspar's surviving followers teamed up with the Ostrogoths, and they wreaked havoc across parts of the empire, even seizing key cities. Leo had no choice but to grant some of the Ostrogothic leaders high-ranking positions, though he kept them far away from Constantinople itself. So, after Leo I died in 474 CE, his grandson, Leo II, took over the throne. But here's the thing. Leo II was only 7 years old. That's where Zeno, Leo II's dad and an Isaurian, steps in. Since his son was too young to rule, Leo II's mom made Zeno co-emperor. Unfortunately, after just 9 months, young Leo II died, leaving Zeno as the sole emperor. Now, while Zeno might have taken power, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The Isaurians, like the Germanic tribes before them, were super unpopular in Constantinople. The people in the capital didn't appreciate any foreign group, whether Germanic or Isaurian, having so much influence over their empire. Even though the Isaurians were technically from within Byzantine territory, they were still seen as uncivilized outsiders with an arrogant attitude, which didn't sit well with the locals. And if that wasn't bad enough, Zeno's rule was immediately challenged. His own mother-in-law, Verina, and her brother, Basiliscus, the same Basiliscus who botched that major military campaign against the Vandals, teamed up with a disgruntled Isaurian general named Ilus to overthrow him. Zeno had to flee the capital and retreated to Isauria, where he hoped to gather support. But things didn't exactly go Zeno's way at first. Basiliscus, despite getting some backing from Ilus, turned on the Isaurians quickly, ordering a brutal massacre of them in the capital. However, Basiliscus didn't last long. His religious blunders and just overall bad leadership made him deeply unpopular in Constantinople. Plus, he allowed Germanic influence, through his alliance with Theodoric Strabo, to creep back into the capital, which annoyed a lot of people, including Ilus, who eventually switched sides and started supporting Zeno again. Zeno, with the help of Ilus, made a comeback in 476 CE, right around the same time the Western Roman Empire fell. Once back in power, Zeno wasted no time pushing out Theodoric Strabo and reducing the Ostrogoths' hold on his court. But Zeno's problems with the Ostrogoths didn't end there. After Aspar's fall, Theodoric Strabo had become the leading Germanic figure near the Byzantine Empire, regularly raiding the Balkans and even threatening Constantinople itself. To counter Strabo, Zeno supported a rival Ostrogoth leader, Theodoric the Amal, also known as Theodoric the Great. Zeno even gave him the title of Magister Militum, the commander of the army. However, this alliance with Theodoric the Great didn't last long, and Zeno found himself constantly trying to play these two Ostrogoth leaders against each other. But when Strabo died in a riding accident, Theodoric the Great became the sole leader of both Ostrogoth groups. Even though the Ostrogoths continued to be a thorn in his side, Zeno managed to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Theodoric's forces helped Zeno crush Basiliscus, and later, Zeno even used Theodoric to suppress another rebellion led by the Isaurian general Ilus. In a clever move, Zeno sent Theodoric to Italy with imperial approval to overthrow Odoacer, the king of Italy, and rule the region as Zeno's representative. This move didn't just solve the problem of Theodoric and his army, it also cleared out the last remaining significant Germanic influence from Byzantine territory. Through all this, it's clear that while ethnicity played a role in the politics of the time, it wasn't the only thing driving decisions. Power and control were the ultimate goals for figures like Zeno, Leo I, and Theodoric. Zeno might have been an Isaurian, and Leo I might have been backed by a Germanic leader, but these emperors were willing to make deals with whichever group could help them stay in power. And Zeno, as we know, wasn't exactly the most popular emperor. His rule was marked by constant rebellions, controversial religious policies, and the aftermath of the Western Roman Empire's collapse. It's safe to say his reputation didn't age well, with later historians like Evagrius Scholasticus outright trashing him, labeling him a servile barbarian. Despite all that, Zeno had placed a lot of his fellow Isaurians in key government positions. But the thing is, once Zeno died in 491 CE, their power crumbled pretty quickly. After Zeno's death, the Byzantines were ready for a change and wanted someone more traditionally Roman on the throne. They ignored Zeno's brother, Longinus, and instead chose a respected court official named Anastasius I. Fun fact, Anastasius ended up marrying Zeno's widow, Ariadne, which definitely helped him secure his claim to the throne. But Longinus wasn't about to fade away quietly. He became the rallying point for a group of people who weren't too happy with Anastasius, many of whom had benefited from Zeno's rule, though it wasn't just the Isaurians supporting him. Anastasius quickly sent Longinus off to Alexandria, but even with him out of the picture, unrest continued in Constantinople. Eventually, most of the Isaurians were either forced out of the capital or left on their own. Anastasius, taking no chances, launched military campaigns to crush what remained of the Isaurians' influence. By the time he was done, the Isaurians were no longer a threat, and a level of peace was restored within the empire. But here's the thing, the Isaurians weren't the only ones stirring the pot. Around this time, Constantinople was also dealing with the infamous circus factions, the Blues and Greens. These groups were originally just sports fans who supported their teams in the hippodrome races, but their influence grew to the point where they were causing political unrest. Anastasius also had to navigate religious tensions because of his sympathies toward the Monophysites, a non-Orthodox Christian group, which added to the chaos in the capital. At this point, though, the Isaurians were seen as natural enemies of Anastasius. After all, they'd been tied to the last three emperors, and with their history of causing trouble, they were viewed as a dangerous wildcard in both the military and political spheres. So, after a 40-year run where they held significant influence, the Isaurians were finally knocked off their pedestal. Now, let's talk about the legacy of the Isaurians. They might not be the most well-known group from Roman or Byzantine history, but their influence during their time in power was crucial for the future of the Byzantine Empire. Even though the people of Constantinople saw them as outsiders, they weren't invaders like the Germanic tribes. The Isaurians were actually subjects of the empire, and their rise to power played a key role in pushing back against the Germanic influence that had already wrecked the Western Roman Empire. When Leo I brought the Isaurians into the imperial army, it was a game-changer. He used their strength to dismantle the power of the Germanic faction led by Aspar. If the Germanic tribes had continued to grow in influence, who knows what would have happened to the Byzantine Empire. Zeno's decision to send Theodoric and the Ostrogoths to Italy was the final nail in the coffin for Germanic control in Byzantine politics. In the end, the Isaurians helped eliminate the Germanic threat, and by the close of the century, the Byzantine Empire was free from foreign influence in its policies, rulers, and governance. Through their rise and eventual fall, the Isaurians might just have been the ones who saved the Eastern Roman Empire from meeting the same fate as the West.